Hey guys, it's Saria. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a DIY using these Dollar Tree coffee cup ornaments. I guess that's the best way to describe them. They are only available in the fall. So during the fall, Dollar Tree puts these out. You do get a pack of 8. They are made of wood and they are like wood sliced, very thin, but also really nice quality for $1.25 for 8 of them. And I love them. As you guys can see, I'm a big fan of coffee. Got my coffee fall sweatshirt on. And I also have my Sarah Sanderson Frappuccino ears on. So I have been holding on to these little coffee mugs for a while because I wanted to do something really, really fun with them. And the thing that I actually have 2 tutorials in this video for you guys because I wanted to show you 2 different ways of using these coffee mugs in different Disney formation. In the first half of the video, I'm going to be showing you guys a Hocus Pocus version of this craft. And then in the second half of the video, I'm going to be showing you guys a Nightmare Before Christmas idea for this craft. If you guys are interested in one or the other, I will have the timestamps down below for you guys. But if you're interested in both, then please watch the whole video and let me know down below which one ended up being your favorite. If you want to see how I made these 2 crafts, then just keep watching. So I actually started this craft like long ago and finally finished it. But I used these what are these called? They're not cauldrons. They're like pots of gold from Dollar Tree. And I picked them up obviously in like the month of February or March when they had all the St. Patrick's Day stuff out. But I do know that they have versions of cauldrons at Dollar Tree that you could just paint. And they honestly might end up looking even better than this. So I did paint the base of it black using my ink black chalk paint. And then I also ended up just using scissors to cut those little handles off because I didn't like how they looked. So I literally just took scissors and snipped those off so that it would just have smooth sides. And then the green the potion portion of the, I'm going to call it a cauldron, of the cauldron, I painted this really bright neon green. It's literally called neon green and it's an acrylic paint that I picked up at Walmart. And I did a base coat of that neon green to start. I did want to show you guys why I painted the back instead of trying to do the front, because if you try to chip off the letters Lucky, it still leaves an imprint of all of the letters. So unless you plan on covering that up with the rest of the decorations and you like how that looks, it's best just to paint the back of the cauldron. The only thing I don't love about painting the back is that the potion sits on top of the cauldron instead of inside of it, if that makes sense at all. So I'm going to be taking 3 other shades of green. All of these are shades from Walmart. There is a neon, a Christmas tree, and a bright green, which is the same green that we used for the base. So I'm going to be using these to create highlights and shadows in the potion just to give it some depth and some more interesting look than it just being flat green. This was very much trial and error, as all painting projects kind of are for me, but I started by just following the natural curve of the potion and trying to create it almost like it was full of bubbles, and I continued with these circular motions all the way across. When I got to the middle portion of the potion, then I started doing larger curved shapes. Instead of just doing the same size small bubbles, I tried to do some larger ones. And then taking a different clean brush, I started to work on blending this out because it was a little bit too dark. Like it looked like paint, and I wanted to blend it and make it look more shaded, if that makes sense. So I'm just taking a flat, cheap brush and just blending it in using that neon green paint. Here is a close-up of what it was looking like. In the center, I had created accidentally like this one really large bubble, so I am going to try to fix that. We're going to set that off to the side to dry and start working on our ornaments. So you're going to need 3 of these coffee mugs, 1 for each Sanderson sister.
So I'm going to do this a little out of order because I should have done this before I painted, but using just some lightweight spackle, you can pick this up at Dollar Tree as well. I'm just going to fill in the hole at the top of the ornament because we're not going to be hanging these like you would a normal ornament, but just shove it into the hole, and it can not be perfectly flat because then you just go in with a sanding block. Once it's totally dry, sand it smooth, and then you can paint right over it. You're also going to need some painter's tape or washi tape unless you're really good at cutting in a paint line. I'm not, so I'm going to be using some washi tape just to keep my paint lines nice and clean. So I'm going to be starting with Winifred because I already had the green paint down. So I'm going to be using that Christmas green that we used to do the dark lines on the potion. And I'm going to tape out the basic shape of her dress. So she has a middle insert panel on her dress that's purple. And so I'm going to use the washi tape to block that out and then paint everything else green. I prefer to peel off the washi tape or the painter's tape while the paint is still wet. I think it gives you crisper lines. And then as that's off to the side drying, we're going to start on our next one. So same thing, I am going to use the tape to tape off the pattern that I'm looking to do. And for this one, it's going to be Mary. So it is a similar shape because she has a middle insert panel on her corset top, but it's very small because we're going to be doing, it's almost like we're doing the torso of the costume. So we're going to be doing the top portion and a little bit of the bottom portion. So I'm going to tape that out, and then I will be mixing red and orange to create the color of her top. You could also, if you're just going to go buy all of these supplies, just purchase a red-orange color. I just don't have one on hand, so I'm big on paint mixing because I like to use what I have. Now, originally, I really did like this color, but I realized that the underneath of her shirt is orange, and so I definitely made this too orangey, and I'm going to go over it again with more red to make the color more of what I wanted. So this first base coat is really not the shade that I ended up with. Finally, we're going to move on to making Sarah. So same thing as before, you're going to set her cup down and then use the washi tape to block out the shapes of her costume. Sarah's corset is a really mauvey purple pink mixture, so that's what I'm going to be doing, just mixing a purple and a pink acrylic paint that I have on hand. Again though, if you're going to buy new supplies, you can just look for the shade that you actually need if you don't want to worry about mixing paint. So originally this came out a little bit too purple, so I am adding some more pink and just continuing to mix. And then I will go in and paint just the top portion of the cup. I did notice that my lines on some of the taping was different. It wasn't symmetrical, so I'm going in with a skinny brush that's flat, and I'm just very carefully fixing the lines, if that makes sense. Also, Sarah's corset doesn't have a very large insert panel in the center. It's closed pretty tight, so I wanted to bring that inward a little bit more. After making sure the paint was dry, I'm going to go in and do the insert panel for Winifred's costume on the coffee cup. So I'm just using the same purple that I mixed for Sarah's outfit, and I am just going to fill that in very, very carefully using a flat skinny brush. Now we're going to go back to Mary, and again, this is where I noticed that it was just too orangey, so I'm taking a little bit of a redder mixture of orange and red paint and going over it with another coat. I also wanted to add some unique shapes to Mary's because I didn't want them to all just look the same. So I'm curving the edges of her quote-unquote corset. I understand this is a coffee cup, but it makes more sense to me to talk like it's a costume. And then I'm also filling in more of the coffee cup handle just to make it look a little bit different from Winifred and Sarah because they all obviously have their own unique look. After that, I got a lighter orange color and I'm just painting that between the two darker orange colors. This is like the insert panel of her corset. And I liked the way that this lighter orange really popped because I deepened the color on the darker orange. And then on a whim, I decided to add a little bit of this to the handle. I don't really have an explanation as to why, I just did. This next step I actually ended up wishing I hadn't done. So I painted the bottom portion of the cup black using my ink black chalk paint, but then I literally could not tell you why I thought to paint it black, because her skirt is not black at all and the base of it's not black. So skip this step and instead turn your cup around and paint the top of the cup black, because Mary's hair is black with purple kind of woven throughout it. So we're going to be making all of the whipped cream on the top of the cups look like their hair. Next, I painted Winifred's, and I did start with the mixed color that I used for Mary's top. So it's that combination of red and orange, and that's what I used for the base of Winifred's hair. Using the same purple that I used for Winifred's cup, I'm going to be using that for the bottom of Sarah's skirt. So I'm just filling the bottom portion in with that purple color. Using the mauve mixture that I had already, I am just filling in her corset a little bit more. I didn't like how open it looked, so I'm just closing in the gap a little bit more. And then after doing that, I picked up some pink and I'm just filling the open space with a pink color. I did decide to do a second coat of that mauve color because I wanted to deepen the tone a little bit, so I just added another coat. Now you may think I'm crazy, but I'm going to be using the shade Apricot for Sarah's hair. It looks very orange, but I liked the intense yellow quality of it, so I'm going to be using that to paint the top of her mug as a base coat. Going back to Mary, this is where I realized, why did I paint the bottom of the portion of the cup black? So I'm painting it red, but what I would suggest doing is creating your own burgundy or getting a burgundy colored paint. So mixing red and black, or red and purple and black, to just make more of a burgundy shade for the bottom of her, or for the skirt. Next, going back to Winifred, I'm going to be using the gold color, that gold acrylic paint, and I'm going to be creating the crosses on her corset, so just creating little X's on the top portion of that purple piece. And then I will also use the same gold color to create the designs that line where the green meets the purple, if that makes sense. And here is a close-up of what the Winifred cup is looking like so far. Next, we're going to go in and start adding some highlights to her hair, or her whipped cream, I guess. And using that light orange color that we used on the corset insert for Mary, so how Mary's shirt had that middle portion that was a really light orange, that's the color that I'm using for the highlights. And honestly, you guys, I just tried to think about the shape of the whipped cream as it's already cut out. So thinking about where light would hit this and trying to follow along the lines that I'm given in order to give it just a little bit more depth. I am going to repeat these steps with Sarah, and I'm going to be using this really light yellow color called Daffodil. It's the same Apple Barrel acrylic paint brand that I've been using. And then I'm not trying to match what I did on Winifred, but I also want it to still make sense. So I don't really want them to look identical, but I do want them to look similar. So I am using my finger to dab this color because it was just a little bit too bright. And then I'm going in with the darker color to add some shadowing as well. For Mary, I'll be using purple because she has those purple streaks throughout her hair, and this is the best way I could think to work them in. And then just dabbing them with my finger to mute them a little bit and blend them in. Next, for Mary, I'm going to be adding a plaid detailing to the bottom portion of the cup like her skirt has. So using red again, now that it's all dry, I'm going to use a flat, thin brush and just tap down diagonal lines. And then I'll do the same thing going the other direction to create a plaid looking pattern. I am only focusing this on the edges because Mary's outfit does feature an apron on the bottom. So I'm leaving space because I know I'm going to create that apron look as well. Using the same brush and the apricot color that I used for Sarah's hair, I'm going to add these lines into the plaid because I wanted to give it a little bit more dimension. To me, plaid always has like multiple colors in it. I don't know if that's true, but that's how I imagine plaid, is that it uses multiple colors to create a crisscrossing pattern. So we're using yellow and red basically. I created a burgundy color mixing black and red, and that's what I'm using to draw in the apron for Mary. And then I did decide to add a little purple into the mixture and just blend it. I'm trying to work very quickly here because this is off the cuff, you guys. I'm just adding things. But I'm trying to mix together the red and the purple paint on top of that really thick black coat that I already did in order to create the color that I want. And I'm honestly just making a rectangle to make it look more like Mary's skirt. I'm just going to go in now and clean up some of my edges because while making the plaid I did overlap a little bit into the corset. Mary's skirt has these little hoops on the belt, like where the top meets the bottom of her outfit. She has these little rings. So I'm just drawing those in with a detail brush and some gold acrylic paint. Next, I'm going to be adding the strings for Mary's corset. So I'm going to be doing the little crisscross design using that red-orange mixture that we made earlier and just making X's down the center portion of the corset. I do want to mention I go back to the paint colors I make a lot, you guys. So if you can't do this all in one day and you're mixing paints, I would highly suggest doing it in a container with a cover so that you don't have to try to remix the paints perfectly the next day or whenever you have time to finish the project. And that's what Mary's looking like so far. We're going to get back to Sarah now and add in the strings for her corset top using that same mauve-y mixture that we created earlier, just making little X's all the way down. Once again, I lost my mind and just flew off the cuff and grabbed my black chalk paint and I drew in the little scoopy lines because Sarah's skirt has these little additional fabric folds on the sides, and I don't know why I grabbed black. This was dumb of me. So I am very frantically trying to spread this paint out right now before it completely dries, because if you guys have worked with chalk paint, you know it dries really, really quickly. So I'm just blending it out as much as I can, and then I will cover this in purple in order to make it look correct. I do like the dark tone that it created, but a better way would be to mix black and purple paint or just use a darker purple. See, it turned out okay. Going back to Winifred, I am going to attempt to kind of shade her costume a little bit. So taking just a little bit of black paint, I am emphasizing where the waistline of the dress would be and just trying to blend that out. But this black being chalk paint, it is so intense. And it dries pretty much immediately. So it's a little bit tricky. I do wish I had black acrylic paint because I think this would have been much easier. I added more of that dark green paint in order to blend it better, and this is how it turned out. For Sarah, I am going to go in and add some detailing to the corset, just little kind of like polka dots, attempting to make them look like the teeniest tiny little flowers. We're going to be adding a stencil to this, so I did decide to Mod Podge over the potion part of the cauldron because I wanted to make sure that I don't accidentally rip up the paint when I pull off the stencil. So just doing a pretty thick coat of Mod Podge and then allowing that to dry for about 30 minutes. Okay, so now we're done detail painting. So I cut out a stencil that said Sanderson Sisters Brewing Company. I designed it on Canva, which you can do for free. Some of the stuff on there you do have to pay for, but they do have a lot of really cute free things that you can design on. So just canva.com is a really great resource. So after allowing the Mod Podge to totally dry, I'm going to lay down this stencil, just being really careful to make sure that it's centered and that I like the placement of it before I go down and use my little squeegee tool to make sure that it's nice and flat. If you guys do not have access to a die cut machine, that's okay. I actually do have a way of getting around that. I will link a video down below. It's got 3 Hocus Pocus crafts, and I show you guys how to get this exact look just by using paper. So if you have access to a printer, or if you can go to like a UPS and print a single piece of paper with the design on it, I can show you guys kind of a way around it. So just check out the tutorial below and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But after applying the stencil, then I'm going to go in with my black chalk paint and a sponge brush, and I'm just going to tap down the paint over the stencil. I like to peel the stencil up while the paint is still wet because I think it gives me the cleanest lines. Next, we're going to be using these Dollar Tree wooden cubes to prop up the coffee cups. I think this just gives it kind of an added element, makes it look a little bit more expensive, if you will. So I'm going to be using these to prop them up. I used 2 for Winnie and 1 for Mary and Sarah. And then I'm just trying to get the placement right before I glue them down, but we will just be using hot glue to attach those. Before I go in and attach them, I'm going to go ahead and paint over where I put the spackle, because as I showed you guys at the beginning, I didn't spackle when I should have. So now I'm just covering it up. After getting the placement where I like it, I'm just going to go in with my hot glue gun and attach these cubes. I'm showing you guys this right now because I thought I had them where I liked them and I didn't. So I just ripped them off and retried. I originally had Winnie glued down in a way that just didn't look right, so I am re-gluing down the blocks, stacking 2 on top of each other, and then adding Winnie on top of that. But just hot glue. If you want this to be more permanent, then I always encourage you guys to use like something like E6000 for a more permanent hold and hot glue for an immediate hold. The final thing is to add the string back onto the sign, so I'm just pulling the original, or this might not be the original, I don't even remember. All the Dollar Tree signs come on like this jute twine string, so I have a few of them. But I just strung that back through, and then you can hang it up and decorate.
I'm going to interrupt really quick before we go on to the next craft. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, especially if you are watching the whole thing all the way through. It really helps my channel and it helps the analytics. I don't really know how those work, if I'm being perfectly honest. But this channel is the source of income that is savings for my children's future. So it really helps me out when you guys watch the videos, like the videos, comment, and subscribe. So I just wanted to give you my sincerest thanks. And if you haven't done those things yet, if you would consider it, I would be so grateful. Let's get back to crafting.
For Sally's cup, I laid down a bunch of washi tape in a random pattern, and then I just started filling in with yellow paint first, and then I went ahead and peeled off the washi tape. This is just giving me like an initial pattern, and I'll be honest, I don't totally think the washi tape was necessary, because when I peeled it off and saw this big open gap, I was like, oh. Well, so the goal of this is just to make it look like a bunch of scraps of fabric put together. So, I didn't try to make them all, you know, triangular or rectangular. I tried to give them a variation in shape, and I used the same color scheme as what's on her dress. So I had a pink and a yellow and a teal primarily being used. The pinky color that you see me using is basically the same combination that I created for the Sarah coffee cup in the previous tutorial. So I just mixed purple and pink together to get kind of a mauvey in-between color. And then I'm just going in and filling in with random shapes until I have a patchwork coffee mug. After allowing the paint to dry, I'm going to go in with this black paint pen, and I'm just going to start outlining some of the patches in black. And then I do go in and outline the rest of them in black as well. So I do have an outline around each little patch that I created, but I wanted some of these to specifically be black patches initially. After outlining all of the patches, then I'm going in with that same black paint marker, and I'm just making little dashes and X's to make it look like there's stitching on each patch. And here is a close-up of the Sally mug so far. Using that black paint marker one more time, we're going to go in and add some of the designs from Sally's dress. So there's little swirls and crisscross patterns and striped lines. I just pulled up a reference photo of Sally while I did this and just kind of doodled to my heart's content. Here is another close-up of what Sally's cup looks like so far. Jack's cup is pretty simple from a painting perspective. I'm going to be using this black chalk paint in the color ink, and I'm just going to put some washi tape at the top to protect the whipped cream portion, and then I'm just going to paint the entire cup black. Something to note is the handle direction when you're painting these. Initially, I did already make this cup, but the handle was going the wrong direction for how I wanted it on my sign. So just keep in mind that if you want your cups to alternate what direction the handle is facing, then paint accordingly. After I painted it all black and allowed it to dry, then I went to create Jack's little bow tie. Using some white craft foam and a pencil, I'm just going to sketch out what I want the bow tie to look like, and then I am going to cut this out using an X-Acto knife and paint it. I did lay the craft foam down on the cup just to make sure that I had the right scale proportions, and then it occurred to me that I could just trace the cup onto the craft foam so that I can get the exact proportions that I'm wanting for the bow tie. After sketching it with my pencil, I just went in with that same black paint marker from earlier and filled it in, and then after allowing that to dry, I do cut it out using an X-Acto knife. Now, the biggest reason that I wanted this made out of white craft foam is because, as you can see here, even after painting it black, now I have this nice white outline on the edges of it because the foam itself is white. Next, I'm going to go in and add the pinstripes onto Jack's cup. I did not do anything super special with this. I used a ruler and a white paint pen, and I'm just very carefully going in and adding pinstripes. I did not push down too hard because I wanted kind of that faded look on some of the stripes where they're not all perfectly solid or all the same. And then after allowing that to dry, we will go in and glue on his bow tie. I had already painted this cup gray because I had planned on using it for something else. And then I was like, oh, I'll use it for Beryl's cup. But then later on, I realized that skeletons are not just flat gray. So you will see me fix this, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut ahead to that, and then I'll re-show you how I did the face. So I'm going in with some white chalk paint. As you can see, I've already painted his face, and I'm just going to try to fix what I messed up. So I do just go in and initially just paint him all white, just thinking I'm basically starting from scratch. And then using a paper towel, I'm just going to kind of wipe off any excess paint. I also did realize that the eye that I had already painted on there was not totally dry, so I just was trying to remove it to make my life a little easier. I didn't want to paint him all white though, because I knew that his eyes and smile would be white, so I'm trying to kind of do a whitewash, if you will. If you did not initially mess this up, then I would say mix a little bit of gray into your white paint just to get a twinge of gray to the white that you're using, or do a coat of gray, let it dry, and then whitewash on top. Now, because I can still see the face, I'm just going in and tracing it, but I'm going to cut here and show you guys how I initially put the face in. For the eyes on this one, I just pulled out a button that I thought was the right size, and I traced that onto my cup in order to create his eye shape. And then I did just freehand his mouth, going for that skeletal type of smile. Once I got the general outline of his smile, I do go in and curve his teeth because Beryl's smile is very, I don't know how to explain it. His teeth have like these curves on the outside of them, almost like they're circles on the top. So that's what I'm going and trying to add in. As always, I suggest you guys use reference pictures when you're doing stuff like this. I definitely don't think I could freehand from memory. And for the nose, it's super simple. It's just these two little open slits. Then you're going to go in with your white paint marker, fill in the teeth, the nose, and the eyes. After the white paint marker has dried, I'm going to go in with a black paint marker and add some outlines. So I am outlining each tooth and then also going across the middle of his grin. I'm going to outline his nostrils as well as his eyes. And if you see here, when I redid this, I did bring in the white of his eyes because I wanted to give it like the look like there's an eyeball behind the eye socket, if that makes any sense. So after outlining his smile, I'm going to go in and do the outer rim of what I traced for his eye, and then I'll also add in some little pupils. And that's the last painting step for Beryl at the moment. So next we're going to move on to Locke. So Locke is a red color, and I actually painted this mug to be Mary initially, and I lost it. And then I found it again. So now this one's actually going to be Locke. So it's already red. I'm just going to leave it the red color that it is. And then I am just going in and doing his little smile that has the super sharp, oh yeah, kind of like shark teeth. Again, just using a reference photo. His nose was super easy. It's just a line down the center and then 2 dots for the nostrils. And then I just kind of outline them to make it look pointy. And then the tip of his nose is like a triangle. So it's like half a stick person with 2 nostrils. His eyes are pointed toward the inside, so I just kind of hand sketched them in, and then I'm going in with my paint marker. I found Locke's face to be the easiest one to do. Like, it took me the least amount of time, and I was just pretty quickly able to sketch it in, go in with my paint marker and fill it in. Something I would encourage you guys to, though, is don't rush. So I went in with a white paint marker to fill in his teeth, and I really should have waited for the black paint to dry because those paint markers can very easily bleed into each other. So make sure that you're just doing one at a time. Either fill in the teeth first and let that dry, or do the mouth and then fill in the teeth later. While Locke is drying, we're going to start on Shock. So I'm just using these 2 paint colors. One is a super light teal and then a navy blue, and I'm just going to mix them together to try to create the color of Locke's mask. Or Shock's mask, sorry. This was a really hard color to recreate. It's like a combination of blue and green and a little bit of gray. And I tried very hard to get it as exact as I could, but it is a little tricky. So once I got it to a color I was okay with, then I just taped off the top and went in and painted the base coat this grayish tealish color. I did want to point this out again because this was one of the moments where I realized I hadn't been paying attention to the direction of the handles and how I wanted them to sit on the sign. So I knew that I was probably going to have to repaint Beryl anyway because I wanted him to be white and not gray. So it just made sense to kind of repaint him, but I wanted his handle to stay on the side that it was on. So I wasn't able to use the back, even though the back was like not used yet. So going back to Shock's cup, I'm pulling up a photo for reference, and this was actually the one that I struggled with the most, oddly enough. So she has like a really elongated nose on her mask, and then these really narrow eye holes, and they have like kind of like under eye bags sketched into them. And then the mouth is just this little frowny face, and it seems really simple, but getting the coloring and the shading right took me a few tries. So I did custom mix a lighter color and a darker color and just kind of ended up trying different things as I was working. I definitely think that I should have done a darker color as opposed to doing a lighter color on the mask, but in my head I was like, the nose is raised up, so thinking of it like makeup, it would be like a highlight versus a contour. Now, because I didn't like this lighter color, I did mix a slightly deeper shade and went over it again, trying to fix it, and I still wasn't totally satisfied with it, so I am going to come back and try something else that I'll show you in just a second. For the whipped cream portion on the cups, I went for however their hair looks, with the exception of Locke, because Locke's hair is red, but I didn't want to paint it red because I thought that it would just be too monochromatic with the cup. So I did leave it black because, again, this cup was originally a Mary Sanderson cup. And then I just went over the little purple highlights that I had already put in with a red color. And then that one was all done. So going in on Shock's cup, I decided to paint the whipped cream purple to kind of incorporate her witch costume. Shock's hair color is odd. It's kind of like dark green, but then in certain shades of light, it looks different colors. So I decided to go with purple just to emulate her costume. And then Beryl ended up being my personal favorite for how these turned out. I used a neon green paint, and it came out very neon. Shock's purple top needed a second coat because it was really sheer. You could see the wood poking through the color, so I did do a second coat on that one. Jack's was super simple. I just painted the top white because his color scheme is black and white. And then for Sally, I painted it red like her hair. Once they dried, I went in with a gray color to add little dimensional markings, I guess, to the whipped cream for Jack. So I just, again, followed the line of the whipped cream. They all do end up looking pretty similar, but I tried to add little types of variations.
So I did want to talk to you guys about this one because apparently I missed some of this on footage. So the things that I didn't get was after I went in and repainted it with the slightly darker color, I went back in with the light color because you can see it on like the outer eye right there, but then the darker colors on the inner eye. And I just kind of decided that the eyes should be lighter, but everything else could be that slightly darker shade. I also distressed the cup, so using this same light shade, I just dry brushed it on. So I like dipped the paintbrush in and wiped off most of the paint and then just kind of like swiped it up and down the cup. And then on the whipped cream, I did add black accents to give it some depth. And then on Beryl, I missed this part, but I used this same teal color from the mask on Shock. I'm sorry, this is so hard to do. And I used that to add like contouring essentially to Beryl's whipped cream.
So I did use my die cut machine to cut out the letters for the sign, and I am actually going to reverse weed because I'm going to be using it as a stencil. So I'm pulling out all of the letters and just tossing those out, and then I'm going to be using what's left as a stencil for my sign. Once I had it all weeded, I went ahead and applied it to my sign. This is a little bit tricky. I don't have a perfect way to tell you how to center this. I do just kind of eyeball mine, to be completely honest. I did make sure to squeegee it down really good, and then I took some washi tape and taped around it to make sure that none of the paint would bleed through or get where I didn't want it on the sign. And then using white chalk paint, I'm going to be using a sponge brush, and I'm just going to be tapping this on to the stencil until I've got it completely covered. And I like to peel my stencils off while the paint is still wet. In my opinion, it helps with preventing bleeding of the paint. So I did a small font, or small sizing on the font for Halloween Town Cafe, and then I wanted menu to be the largest word, so I did cut that separately. The font I'm using is an Alice in Wonderland font, and to me that was very Tim Burton-y, and I already had it on my computer. So same method, I just used washi tape to tape around the stencil, and then I used white chalk paint and a sponge brush to just tap on the paint, and then I am peeling off the stencil while the paint is wet. So next we're going to move on to gluing the actual cups to the board. So I did lay these out ahead of time to make sure that I liked the spacing and that I had enough space to add the names of the drinks next to them, because that's kind of like the whole theme with this. But I am making sure that they line up using those handles. So again, I have the handles alternating so that they're always on the outside of the sign. And then I'm using the top and the bottom portion of the handle to line it up with the sign to make sure that they're all looking uniform, if that makes sense. You can obviously use any kind of marker on the cup that you want to align it how you like, and you also don't have to have them be all completely symmetrical, but that's just how I personally like the sign. And then I'm just attaching these with hot glue, and they attached quite well. The last step is I use my die cut machine to cut out the names of all of the drinks. I actually posted this on my story and a couple of y'all came up with these and they're so cute. So it was the Sally Espresso, the Pumpkin King Spice Latte, the Lacchiato, which I know was one of y'all, and that one made me laugh so hard. And it actually would have worked for Shock as well, but I wanted them to be different, so I did the Shockuccino. And then I had to look it up, but it's like the Breve or Breve, I don't know, but I used the word barrel in that. And so same method of using washi tape to guard the stencil, and then tapping down white chalk paint and then peeling it up pretty much immediately. And that was the final step for creating this Nightmare Before Christmas coffee sign. I'm a pretty big fan of how this came out. I did forget to film an official outro, so I'm just going to show you guys again, like the Sanderson Sisters version or the Halloween Town Cafe menu version. You guys are going to have to let me know which one of the two signs did you like more. And I will see you guys very soon for some more awesome Halloween crafts. Bye, guys.